Good morning to everyone. Let's go on with the commentary of the westmemphistreefact.com website. Today I want to make a commentary video for the only section that I am really interested in about the site, which is the section about evidence. Namely, fact, there is evidence the West Memphis 3 committed the murders. Now, why this is the only section I'm really interested in? Because, as I already said, all the other documents and materials that I read about on this website ranges from Damien Eccles was mentally ill, Damien Eccles made scary drawings, Damien Eccles had a test of blood, all things that are totally unrelated with the concept of being guilty or being not guilty, and more precisely being proved guilty. So, now let's read about the supposed evidence. Now, I don't know if this is all the evidence that was really available to the prosecutors. I am trusting, I am making an act of trust toward the authors of the website, and I hope they did their homework since they are a culpabilist site. It would be really ironic that a website that is dedicated to persuade people the West Memphis 3 are guilty left out some evidence, some files that could support the accusation. So now I read on the website. The documentaries leave out the considerable physical and circumstantial evidence presented at the trials. Some recent mainstream media reports go so far as to say no evidence was found. Nothing could be further from the truth. The murderers slicked off the creek bank and washed away most of the physical evidence in the muddy water. Despite their efforts, a few items remained. Well, what can I say about that except a small consideration, which you must also prove that the murderers actually washed away some evidence. It is quite an ironic thing to say, because if we follow that logic, a person could be arrested on the basis that there is no evidence. Your Honor, we found no DNA, no blood, no fingerprints, and that proves the accused washed away the evidence. It would be funny if it wasn't deeply said. Now, let's go on with the evidence. Fibers. Green fibers microscopically similar to a shirt found in Eccles' home, and red fibers microscopically similar with a bathrobe found in Baldwin's home were found on the victims. The defense retested the fibers in 2012 and claim they do not match. However, the people who retested the evidence were paid by the defense. Okay. Now, let's concede something to the accusation. Let's see the fiber was effectively compatible with the shirt and with the bathrobe found in the accused houses. And that? What about that? It isn't even proved that is the same fiber. It simply proves that the fiber is compatible with that kind of dress. It proves absolutely nothing. Many dresses are commonly sold and will be present in almost every American or even European house. This is not evidence at all. Candle wax. Now, that caused some trouble and some reflection to me too. This is very interesting. What appeared to be blue candle wax was found on a book called Never on a Broomstick in Eccles' bedroom. A small blue candle was also found on a table in Dominic Tier's bedroom. Dominic Tier was Eccles' girlfriend at the time. Why this is important? Because the blue candle wax was found on the shirt of the victim Stevie Branch. It was never proven that the waxes matched, but this strange coincidence was mentioned in the prosecution's closing argument. Now, the blue candle wax is a very specific, a very peculiar thing. It is something that an occultist know quite well. I have blue candles and black candles too, since I'm a dabbling scholar of occultism, and I recognize it's an uncommon item that is usually found in the houses of people that are interested either in occultism or in neo-paganism, Wicca, or in the subculture of heavy metal. Now, that simply proves, if we assume it is a genuine evidence and it was not made up, a thing that I come to suspect since that clue popped up quite later during the trial, very after the lead prosecutor claimed they were sure on an 11 on a scale from 1 to 10. But let's assume it is genuine evidence. Yes, this proves that the murderers were probably into occult, into maybe also into Satanism or neo-paganism, or maybe into the heavy metal culture. But this does not prove that West Memphis 3 are the murderers, because there were not the only three guys that were dabbling in occultism. Well, actually, only Eccles was dabbling in occultism from the three, but he wasn't, by sure, the only person in all West Memphis that had this kind of interest. There was a shop in West Memphis, which is a little town of several thousand people, and some of them, a minority, but at least several dozen, were passionate amateurs of occultism, of heavy metal, and that kind of subculture. So, again, this is not circumstantial evidence. This is not evidence at all, because it does not point to a specific person. It gives clues about what kind of person could be the murderer or the murderers. Personally, I think it is extremely probable there was more than a murderer. But it doesn't tie the crime scene to Eccles' home. Because, as the website recognizes, it was never proven that specific wax found in the crime scene was the wax found in Eccles' home. Now, the bloody necklace. That's a good one. I will say it honestly. If a necklace belonging to Damien Eccles was found with Eccles' blood on it and one of the victims' blood on it, I would be the first to say they are guilty. That would be an hard incriminating true genuine evidence. The kind of forensic evidence that allow to declare a person guilty beyond reasonable doubt. There is a little problem. They never presented that evidence on the trial, nor the first nor the second. On the first trial, the excuse used to justify that evidence was not presented was absolutely ridiculous. They claimed since the trial is already started and already going on, we want not to risk to cause problem to the persecution and risk to impair the trial. It is so weird. I have difficulties to even say that. They claim to have an hard incriminating evidence, which is the metaphorical equivalent of a smoking gun with fingerprints of the accused, and they don't use it because they are already sure they will win. I never heard anything similar in any of the criminal cases that I studied and I was interested in, and not to brag about, I read quite a volume of material. And on the second trial, they um, remember they said they talked about that bloody necklace, but again they didn't present that at the trial. Why? Because they claimed the DNA that was on the necklace was so little that it was enough just for a single axon, so it was completely consumed and it wasn't possible to repeat the axon and since provide a testable, a verified, acceptable evidence. This sounds like a dirty move to try to influence the jury and to persuade the jury there was an hard incriminating evidence without presenting it. And a fair judge would have forbid them to present in a trial such non-existent evidence because it would constitute an extremely serious prejudice for the jury. And now the three knots. The victims were tied with three distinct knots. This pointed to three killers involved in the murders. I agree. Three or more. The victims, the murderers, were probably more than one. And again, is that an evidence? This is not an evidence. This is a clue that the murders were more than one, but is not specifically tied to three specific people. So I don't even understand why they list this kind of things under the evidence list. Blood at the crime scene. In the Paradise Lost documentaries, you will hear people say no blood was found at the crime scene. Okay, this is an error. Many people have used that to theorize that the murders took place somewhere else and the bodies were later dumped in the ditch. The fact is, luminol testing in May 1993 revealed significant amounts of blood at the crime scene. Luminol is a chemical that glows when it's exposed to blood. Okay, that is common knowledge. Um, the blood revealed by the luminol clearly shows that the murders occurred exactly where Jesse Miscali said they did. As one law enforcement official described it, the crime scene lit up like a Christmas tree when luminol was applied. Wow. Now, two little considerations. First, there was blood at the crime scene. Yes, of course. These children were killed by stabbing. It doesn't surprise me. The problem is there wasn't the accused blood on the crime scene. It's obvious in the crime scene there is the blood of the victim, but there should be at least a drop of the blood of the accused to constitute an evidence. And about Jesse Miskelly. Jesse Miskelly didn't know even that the victims were tied with the knots of their shoes and not with a rope, and changed his confession at least 6 times. Every time he made a grievous a serious mistake and was corrected by the police. He initially missed the hour of the crime, missed the place, has to be corrected several times. Mm, weren't they the town weirdos? Were they respectable Christians, respectable middle class Christians? That kind of witnessing would never have been accepted. Never. If Jesse was instead of the one that confessed and involuntarily made all the West Memphis 3 wrote in jail for 28 years, if he was witnessing for the defense, they would have laughed at it, laughed. That's it. Then there is the eyewitnesses, but well, I refuse to even comment that. The eyewitnesses denied their own witnessing some years after and also admitted they were forced by the police, influenced by the police and by the prosecutors. So that should count as evidence that the first trial was unfair, not evidence for the accusation. The last thing, the only thing that is actually quite interesting is the lake knife. A knife was found submerged, laid down in the pond directly behind Jason Baldwin's home. Damien's ex-girlfriend, Diana Ocombe, testified that the knife was similar to a knife that belonged to Damien. Now, I want not to make an old tried cliché, but the ex-girlfriend of Damien, just dumped, testified that maybe he saw a similar knife in Eccles' home, and that, in your opinion, is really a fair and credible witnessing. A knife that may or may not be similar of one saw in the house of Eccles. Now, the knife here is wrote, it was quite a particular knife with a deformation on the, I missed the word, in Italian is the Elsa, the lower part, which was used to smash on the head of one of the victims, and the marks on the cranium of that victim could be similar to the marks on that knife. But even the site recognized that it was never proven that the knife was the knife used for the murderers. For sure, it had no fingerprints, no fragments of skin, no DNA, nothing. It was simply a knife with a deformation that may or may not be used for the murderers. And it wasn't even they didn't even found it in the home of one of the accused. It was in a lake that happened to be not so far from the house of Jason Baldwin. Now, to call it an evidence, it was not proven it was the weapon of the murder. It was not the murderers. It was not proven it actually really belonged to Damien. They found no kind of forensic evidence on it. Now, and this is all the overwhelming evidence we have on the West Memphis 3 case. What can I say? If they weren't the town weirdos, if they weren't strange, asocial, weird guys, and one of them with a past of psychiatric problems, nobody would have